Howdy, goody go. Welcome to African Experts with Vickie Remoe, the show that brings you African entrepreneurs, practitioners, researchers, and innovators with big ideas and insights on issues shaping African lives. If you're just joining us for the first time, Kushe. We meet here on Sundays to ask big questions and to learn from African experts and viewers like you. If you're not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do so now so you never miss an episode. Before we dive into this week's conversation, here are a couple things. House rules. This is a live discussion. Should we lose internet connectivity or electricity, please don't leave, as we will be right back. Also, I want to invite you to engage with each other in the comments section for Talk Small, because this is a conversation across the continent and in the diaspora. Also, as you're watching, share the love, share the content, share the video with other people on your feed so that they can also join this conversation. Today, we are discussing the benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area for medium-sized businesses across the continent. 3 years ago, the African Union launched AfCFTA to create a more unified African market. AfCFTA's top prior objectives are to facilitate intra-Africa trade, reduce tariffs, promote industrialization, sustainable growth, create jobs, and reduce poverty. So far, the African Union's 54 member states have signed the treaty, making AfCFTA the largest free trade area in the world by the number of participating countries. January 1st this year was the official first trading day under AfCFTA, but to realize the benefits of AfCFTA, we've got a long way to go. While countries are still ratifying the agreement, AfCFTA's potential impact on Africa's growth is undeniable. According to the World Bank, it has the potential to lift 30 million Africans out of extreme poverty by 2035. Our next guest is an international trade lawyer and senior expert, trade in services in the Department of Trade and Industry at the African Union. We'll talk about what needs to happen at the national and enterprise level to speed up AfCFTA's impact. But before we meet her, here is a word from our wonderful sponsor, Adama Loves Akara.
You're watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe. You're watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe.
Welcome back. Now let's meet our guest, African expert Beatrice Cheto. Beatrice Cheto is an international trade lawyer who specializes in providing advice and support to African governments in their engagement with regional and international trade policy processes. She's currently a senior expert trade and services in the Department of Trade and Industry at the African Union Commission, where she works on negotiations for the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. From 2004 to 2008, Beatrice was a senior trade policy advisor in the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Sierra Leone on assignment by the Commonwealth Secretariat. Prior to her assignment in Sierra Leone, Beatrice worked for 9 years as a senior lawyer and then program director at the Foundation for International Environmental Law and Development Field in London, building capacity among developing country negotiators at the World Trade Organization. From 2008 to 2010, she worked with the International Lawyers and Economists Against Poverty, ILEAP, in providing capacity building support to a number of African regions in their negotiations with the European Union on trade in services under the EPAs and defining solutions and strategies for African countries' needs on aid for trade. Between 2013 and 2017, Beatrice led the law firm Chariot 8, providing legal services to local, regional, and international clients on a range of corporate law matters, including trade, investment, natural resources, and the environment. She has undertaken assignment from DFID, the European Union Commission, and UNFAO. Beatrice, thank you so much for being on African Experts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And today, we're like, our sound is it's so crisp. It's so crisp and clear. If you're just joining us today, you know that we tried to have this conversation last week and we couldn't have it because of some technical difficulties, but we've rescheduled and we're back. So for everybody who's joining us, thank you for joining us again. And now we can get this conversation going. Beatrice, other than size, how does AfCFTA compare to already existing regional economic communities on the continent, like the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, or the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, and others? And in what ways does AfCFTA propose to increase trade integration beyond the RECs?
Well, actually, the AfCFTA, in a way, is like 50 years in the making. It's one of the flagship projects of the African Union, and it's part of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. So the idea is to maximize economies of scale. You've heard the saying, bigger is better. And so when you have countries like countries in ECOWAS, countries in EAC, countries in SADC all coming together in one African market, then you then get a much larger pool in terms of trade. So, for instance, how are ECOWAS countries going to trade with SADC countries if you don't have like a more expanded space? So that's what AfCFTA does. It brings all these different regional and economic communities together in this big pool. And then Africa, trading as a single market, can then have a much stronger voice vis-a-vis third countries like, the US or China or other economic blocs like the EU. So in a way, that kind of helps strengthen Africa's voice. It helps strengthen Africa's trade muscle in a way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the goal is to leverage what's already existing, right? So it doesn't disband, but it's like, let's use these already existing RECs as building blocks for bigger Africa-wide integration. Okay, so this is it's really ambitious. And in order for the continent to undertake this process, it means that it requires national policy liberalization for success. This early on, I know we just got started. This early on, are there any countries that are leading the way to facilitate this One Africa Market agenda? And if so, what are these countries and what are they doing to basically speed up liberalization?
Actually, there's been quite a lot of momentum. That's one really beneficial thing. And for some people, for some outsiders looking in, Africa has kind of taken them by surprise, because it's almost like we have, like we say in Sierra Leone, they get one word, pandis thing. So of course, you would have the larger groups of countries like, the Kenyas of this world, the South Africans, even a small country like Rwanda, but which is also beginning to kind of flex its kind of diplomatic and economic muscle. Ghana, for instance, where the headquarters of the AfCFTA secretariat is. So you really have almost all the countries speaking with one voice in terms of we need to get this done like yesterday. They came together in 2012, said, we're going to launch the start of negotiations. We're going to get this done by the end of 2017. In March 2018, they came together and signed the agreement. So in effect, there's really been almost consensus around this idea of regional integration, deeper regional integration. Like, we are Africans, why are we trading with other third countries rather than ourselves? We're going to do it.
Right. But are there any countries that you feel like are further along, or is it that those countries that are more economically developed, like you mentioned, South Africa and Kenya, and I mean, Rwanda is such an interesting case because you wouldn't say like Rwanda's economy can compete with that of like South Africa or Kenya or Nigeria, but because of their what seems like a desire to take this like very strong place in Africa as a key player, they always, like most recently, they just seem to be like, every time you turn around, Rwanda is in the chat room. And you're like, hey, small country, what are you doing?
Punching above their weight. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what does that look like? What's happening internally in a country like Rwanda, perhaps, on the national liberalization front to make it appear, to allow it to punch above its weight on AfCFTA?
Well, I think a country that is wanting to take advantage of this trade agreement would certainly look at its national trade reform. In terms of Rwanda, I know what they have gotten right already is that they have decided that they will reform their business environment. And if the general business environment is good and conducive to domestic business, foreign business, then already you have business confidence. You then have people saying, oh, wait a second, I can register my business in like 2 days or 1 day or whatever. I can do it online. When I go for a license, the procedures are clear. The fees aren't astronomical. I can have the confidence that this is a place I can do business. And I think that's where Rwanda is kind of slightly ahead of the pack in certain respects, where they have said the general business environment has to be good.
Right.
And with that general business environment, you then get the basis or the foundation for trading. Because if your procedures are right, the customs procedures are good, that's all part of the AfCFTA. Then you've already got yourself started. I know that South Africa already, they are beginning to think about opening up and making sure that their customs procedures are compliant with already what is in the customs annex in the AfCFTA protocol on trade in goods. So yeah, countries right now should start, because as you said, start of trading was launched on the 1st of January. What are we waiting for? Already, customs officials can start being trained in what does the customs annex say. Ministries of trade can send out little information sheets about the AfCFTA to all the chambers of commerce in their countries. Business associations can begin to tell their members about the opportunities in the AfCFTA. So there's a lot that can already happen behind the scenes.
I mean, as with most things, right? Charity starts at home. At the end of the day, if your local industry, your local businesses and enterprises are finding it difficult to navigate your local policies, right? Because of variation, because they're not streamlined, it's going to be that much harder for them to succeed locally, but then also even compete regionally, right? So you kind of have to get in, I guess the people who make the policymakers need to get out of their own way, because to allow for liberalization, to allow for businesses to grow and thrive. So then they can say, oh, I'm exporting from Rwanda to Ghana, or I'm exporting from Ghana to South Africa. Okay, I know that most of your work is primarily in services. And as I was looking for information about AfCFTA, I came across the AfCFTA Protocol on Trade in Services. And I can tell you, for as much as I read, I still don't understand what that is. I'm like, okay, Beatrice will have to break this down, because I am in the services sector. So I felt like this is something that was very important for me to understand. So please explain to me, for a layperson, right, what the AfCFTA Protocol on Trade and Services means for firms and companies that do provide services like communications, transport, tourism, finance, and banking, which I think are the big ones for trade and services. What do we stand to gain from the AfCFTA Protocol on Trade and Services?
Okay, so the trade in services protocol is slightly different from, I don't know if you know anything about the General Agreement on Trade and Services, which is under the WTO. It's kind of patterned on that, but at the same, what they did was they said, okay, yes, we want to have that model, but we want to go slightly deeper. The thing to remember about services and trading services, it's all about regulation. It's all legislation. It's what legislation is put in place for immigration, for instance, on visas, things like that. So the protocol progressively reduces barriers to trade in services. Through specific commitments that each country makes. So you think of the protocol as like the skeleton. Then the meat on the bones will be these schedules which say for each thing. So for in communication, for instance, on telecom, they'll say, yes, on say postal and courier services, we will liberalize in this way. And they will say, they will put it down in their schedule. That's like the muscle and the veins going into the skeleton. In addition to that, they said, well, just committing may not necessarily, everybody commits, but your regulation may be different from mine in the way you write it, in the way you implement it. So we will also have a framework of regulatory cooperation to make sure that there's things like transparency in terms of how laws are done or applied to different businesses. We will say, laws should be widely published, for instance, in like a gazette or a newspaper or online. We will also say, the banking regulations, we'll all agree that certain prudential regulations are necessary, and so we'll all come together on that. So there's like a two-pronged approach to the protocol on services, but at its core, it is reducing progressively, and that's the word. It progressively reduces barriers. Yes, small. You have
to massage. We have to massage to forward.
Yes, because no one is saying this is going to happen overnight. This is like this. We're playing a long game here. This is like 10, 15, 20 years of making. And if you think about those building blocks that we're using from the regs, from national business practices and regulations and laws, it's like the foundation. Then you put you float you do the walls, you float, then you put your roof and everything, that you put all your finishing touches to your house until your house is this beautiful mansion that you want. So essentially, this is a set of laws set within this framework of the treaty. So that's essentially it.
So one thing that, we mentioned communication, we mentioned financial services. One of the things, especially communications, and I don't know if, after we'll touch on this, is that for example, access to, so like data, the cost of things, right? The cost of things that are exactly the same, but that African consumers are paying different prices for in different markets, which to me, oftentimes, it makes no sense. You go to Liberia, 1 gigabyte of data is $1. You come to Sierra Leone, it's 2 point something dollars. You go somewhere else. So for me, I mean, I'm always thinking about like when we're talking about like intra-Africa trade, right? And if we're talking about regulation across the board, will AfCFTA impact things like, the cost of things in that way where, MTN in one country has to charge citizens if it's 1 gigabyte in Nigeria, it has to 1 gigabyte for $1 in Liberia, it has to be the same across the board. Will it impact those kinds of services in that way?
Well, this is where, again, the marrying of the commitments and the regulatory framework can take place. Mm-hmm. So Liberia then says, we will allow, X number of, in our commitment, we will say our communications or our ICT or our telecoms market is open to other state party. So anyone that signed up to AfCFTA that's a state party can come into our market. That already provides, that's liberalization. That's saying you can come in. When you come in, there may be rules and regulations. So there might be some issues about quality of service. There might be issues about, universal coverage, so that you have to put, services in rural areas and things like that. Now, once you have competition, once you have that many number of, if the market is available, you have many entrants, then you have costs going down. You sometimes have the regulator, a telecoms regulator, saying, oh, by the way, we see that your prices are a little high. We need you to kind of like have a ceiling or whatever, together with the quality. So that, I think, is going to be helpful, where you have, the regulation plus the commitment. And the regulatory cooperation framework, say, might be, all ECOWAS says, that the quality should be like this, and the pricing structure should be like that. So that's an example of where you have some regulatory cooperation helping the commitments at the same time. Because you could have some sharks that just come in and say, we're just going to charge whatever we want. But if the government says, well, no, we're not allowing that, then there's a much more chance that prices will fall down, will drop for the consumer, for the business.
Where hope, so basically the hope is kind of, it's almost like a trickle down. I don't say like trickle down, where that more competition in the market, like the more the market's open, and then there's more players in each market, more competition, you have a trickle down effect on the cost of certain services across the board, like for example in a region, right? So maybe it may not be
Vickie, it may not even necessarily be trickle down, and it may be that because a government says, this is our standard, because that's another thing that AfCFTA will help. It will help standard setting. It will make sure that, as I was talking about, the quality and, universal coverage. So the government, using regulation, can say to the entrants in the market, we want you to, peg your prices at this point, because we are comparing and we want to be competitive. We want our e-commerce to grow. We want our digital trade to grow. So we want to make sure that we are not priced out of the market. Not only that, we want to develop these regional value chains. So, something, say an architect making use of the internet to sell his architectural designs. He's sitting in, Lome, and he wants to sell to Liberia. Yeah, exactly. Or Liberia wanting to sell to Mali. Yes, he has to be able to to kind of like factor all of these into his price when he's he's selling his architectural design. So all of these are backbone services that will help and have a knock-on effect.
Right. So for somebody who's watching right now, a business owner, an enterprise leader who is maybe, I don't know how this would be the first time they're hearing about AfCFTA, but it is possible because, we've had a pandemic also, which has taken up a lot of basically all the news airtime. But for somebody who's a business leader who's watching right now, how do they engage with their local policymakers to hold them accountable for implementing the AfCFTA regulations?
Again, there's strength in numbers. I would advise that they go through their Chamber of Commerce or their association. If they're an engineer, they might have an engineering council or something like that. So, and a lot of ministries of trade already do that. They talk to the Chamber of Commerce, they talk to the Chamber of Mines or the Chamber of Agriculture or whatever. They talk to the Business Women's Council or something. And that's where I think my advice to any business person is download the AfCFTA agreement from the AU website, read it well, know what it says about your industry.
I am laughing because y'all know that agreement is big. Don't be telling people to download that agreement. This thing. When I was prepping for this show, I was like, what is this? So please, how about this? Tell them to look for their section. Look for your section.
Okay. All right.
Because I know our people. This idea
it looks too big. It looks too big to read. And that's what the ministry should be doing. They should be doing this frequently answered question type of document for their own business and putting that out. That's what they should be saying. They should also be saying, we as a ministry or policymaker, this is what we are doing. Let me give you an example. A lot of we in the AUC have been partnering with the UN Economic Commission for Africa to help countries to develop these national AfCFTA strategies.
Okay.
That kind of lays out for that particular country what they intend to do to implement the agreement and to take advantage of it. So usually their private sector has been involved in that process. So for instance, for countries like Zimbabwe, I know they've done it, Zambia, Sierra Leone, even ECOWAS is doing a regional one. So that can also be a question that any business person can say to their ministries of commerce or trade. Do you have an AfCFTA national strategy? Can you send us a copy? We would like to see it. That strategy says where that country feels they are competitive in goods or in services, and what they intend, how they intend to take advantage of the AfCFTA. That would be a good starting point.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, thank you, Beatrice. We're going to take a short break for another word from our amazing sponsor, Adama Loves Akara, and our care for children on the continent and in the African diaspora that is now available on Amazon. Excuse me if I'm stuttering. I've been fasting. We'll be right back.
You're watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe. watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe.
Well, welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, you're watching African Experts. This is a very good time to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to share this broadcast on your feed. With me on the show today is Beatrice Cheto, Senior Expert After Trade Negotiations at the AU. And we've just been talking about how businesses and chambers of commerce within different African countries can basically talk to policymakers or engage policymakers to find out what their local AfTA strategy is so that they know how they can take advantage of AfTA. Okay, now considering the varying levels, and I mean varying levels because the content is so diverse, considering the varying levels of industrialization and human capital across the continent, how will those from smaller or less developed markets be able to really properly competes in a one Africa market? What do you think?
Yeah, that is a perennial problem, actually. And the inbuilt into the agreement is this notion of variable geometry, which says that each country will implement the agreement to using their own capability. So the way that, say, a Kenya implements and takes advantage of the AfCFTA is different from how, say, like a Mali or a Mauritania will do that. Some countries are coastal, some are landlocked, some are like vulnerable small island states like Seychelles or wherever. I think what the analysis that has already been done shows that because it's progressive, each country will use its available businesses, its available civil administration to take advantage of the agreement. And not everyone will take advantage of the agreement in the exact same way. So some countries will have like strong manufacturing. So take a country like Ethiopia, where there's already a strong manufacturing element in terms of their business sector. Other countries, landlocked, may take advantage. We talked about Rwanda recently, just now. We see Rwanda trying to become the ICT hub of East Africa. So there are some countries that will take advantage of their human resources rather than, say, their natural resources. There are others that will take advantage of their coast, focus on tourism. There are others that will, take advantage of like their high tech, like you have, like Mauritius, Kenya. So the analysis that's been done so far by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, even the World Bank, shows that there's everything to play for. Each country can get something out of it. But as you mentioned at the beginning, the rub is, what national legislation are you putting in place? What policy reform are you doing in order to get that done, to make available these advantages and benefits for your citizens, for your business communities?
Or what grants, if you know that you have players in your market who really have a potential competitive advantage that will impact your local economy by participating after and exporting, governments and policymakers could have legislation where they establish grants to make basically enterprises that are close to, like, those who are like, the creme of the crop. You can be like, okay, here is what we're going to provide to you by way of support. Here's by way of, maybe it's tech support that you need. Maybe it's financial support. Maybe it's human capital. Here's what the government is going to provide by way of grants as some kind of national policy to support local enterprises. I know it's liberalization and capitalism, and everybody likes to think that, capitalism is this like complete hands-off, it's completely hands-off from government, but it's not. Across the EU, in the US, in the UK, we've seen time and time again governments intervening to support businesses that are too big to fail, or sectors that are too big to fail. So I think one of the key things in terms of what AfCFTA promises, if governments and policymakers are really, really serious, you could develop policy and create, put together some sum of money and say, hey, we really want this sector to thrive. We think that we have players that are already there. Here's what we're bringing in to support these industries. And I think that, yes, small countries could have sectors where you look at the GDP of that country, it's like, okay, this is a very small economy. But when you look at that sector, you're like, oh, okay, we see you. So we really governments have to give their industry a fighting chance, both in policy and resources.
Yeah. And what for instance, the Protocol on Trade and Services, there's an article there that talks about the right to regulate. It recognizes the right of any government to regulate in accordance with its public policy objectives, etc. And so the way the country or the government implements the agreement will be in line with those public policy objectives. So for instance, if we've got a strong focus on gender, on the environment, then your implementation of the agreement will color how you, you benefit from the agreement and how you implement.
So one of the things that I've been curious about is how, trying to imagine how this marketplace would work. The minute anybody says marketplace, I think of a website, right? I'm like, is there one website where all Africa, so specifically for services, where is this marketplace, right? How does someone in Ghana even know that there are opportunities in Mali, or Congo, or in Zambia? How will that drive integration? Where would we know, and how would we know of these opportunities that are cross-border?
As I mentioned, once it's not like, so services, for instance, is slightly different from goods, where for goods, all you need is the tariff schedule. So for instance, we know that tariffs will come down in about 90% of the tariff lines. And progressively they will get to zero, in 5 years and 10 years, etc. Now, for services, as I told you, a lot of it is behind the border. There's either some law, some regulation, or it can be rules that, for instance, a law society or a bar association makes that determines whether anyone can enter that market. So really the idea would be that once the markets open, then there will be, first of all, the commitments will be published, they'll be known, and then as different state parties take advantage, more and more of this information will get out into the public. A lot of the information has to be made public through, as I said, law and regulation. But who's going to, say, for instance, who's going to know, if Mauritania has anything in its official gazette, unless you're actually there? So, as I said, there's a very key role where the chambers of commerce, other business associations make this known. They come together. And as more and more of the markets open, then it's almost like osmosis. It will get out. At this point, there is I don't know if you already know about an online portal called Sokoku that is endorsed by the AU, which is
tell us about it.
E-trade.
I need to be on there tomorrow.
yes, it's the Africa E-trade portal, and that's seeking to kind of be almost this continent-wide portal where and very embracing of SMEs, by the way, in order to kind of create this kind of like online a platform where business does its business. It's kind of like where business interacts, where you have matchups, meetups, information flow, because especially for services, information is key, and how you get access to the information is also key. Which sources? So this portal aims to kind of provide that and try to bring that information to the business community, as well as have a space where business community can meet and do business. But otherwise, yes, it's through national law, and then of course where the AfCFTA Secretariat will come in. Hopefully, they will do public forums. They will have symposium and events where they can tell the public what is available in terms of market opening, etc.
I think one of the biggest things for SMEs, especially for goods, is logistics, right? Yeah. Ultimately, right now, I find that, and I think most people on the continent who are producers, who are making things, the biggest thing is the only reliable way to get your product to another African country is DHL, right? And so that ends up being like a huge hindrance for that potential e-commerce driven trade, retail of so many things like, artisanal products or fashion, et cetera. You would have a dress that's going to cost you maybe $40 when you buy it, but the shipping cost from, Ghana to Kenya is going to be the cost of the dress plus customs when it arrives. How does AfCFTA envision kind of reducing that kind of barrier?
Mm-hmm. So, Vickie, you're talking about the current situation. Remember, in fact, there are 5, right now we are negotiating liberalization on 5 priority sectors: business, communication, financial, transport, and tourism. And so we're talking the current situation where there hasn't been much liberalization and there hasn't been much trade, and therefore logistics is difficult between African countries. Once the barriers come down, you will see transport links, you will see logistics, you will see distribution centers, you'll see warehouses. If you can imagine the amount of infrastructure that needs to go into setting up transport hubs, for instance, and therefore you also need the law to back that up, don't you? You need the commitment and then you need the law. So right now, all we have is DHL. But once there's liberalization, imagine, say, all the Mano River Union countries saying to DHL,
you're going into my next question, which is the next question before the question, which is great because it is about the vision, right? It's about the future.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a decade from now. A decade from now, if we are on the right track, what can we expect in terms of trade under AfCFTA? Not today, because right now we all know the problems, but looking ahead, and I don't want to say 30 years from now because I keep telling people, my vision of Africa is one where it's not for my children or my children's children. It is for me, myself to enjoy. I don't want to wait. They're like, oh, it's for the future. I said, no, it is for me. Vickie wants to enjoy it now. So 10 years from now, yes, I think that 10 years from now, inshallah, we're all still here in good health and we're all together. But 10 years from now, if we get it right today, right, 10 years from now, what is the vision? How would AfTA look like the Africa we want and need in terms of trade, trade services, trade in goods and services?
Okay. 10 years from now, 90% of tariff lines would have come down to zero, not just in like the developing countries of Africa, but also in the least developed countries. The countries like Sierra Leone, like Gambia, there would be zero. Because of that, there would be inputs into manufacturing. Manufacturing would have exploded on the continent. Regional value chains would have developed. So, for instance, you take a grain like fonio, for instance, funde that we all eat. Imagine it being produced in Sierra Leone and Gambia, shipped to Senegal, processed, boxed, made into breakfast cereal, made into grain, made into all kind biscuits, whatever.
On this dream with you.
Yeah, internet. I mean, ports would have started to have been built. Airports, seaports, transportation links. There would be like a ferry service from Dakar all the way to Douala. You know, there will be.
You're selling.
I am telling you, I so believe in this vision. I so believe in it because if we don't do it, then I mean we've tried the other stuff. Haven't we? We've tried the other stuff. Not only that, in your industry, the creative industry, imagine, hairdressers, fashion designers, they're all now out there producing, creating. They are able to kind of like jump on a plane, go and service a music festival, a fashion show, products are being developed, and there is simplified customs procedures. Standards have been developed and are constantly being developed. Products, research and development. Governments have understood the value of research and development and science, and they are pumping money through TVET institutions. They've changed the curriculum to focus very much on what Africa produces and where it's going. It's also leading the way in terms of the blue economy, the green economy, because we know that climate change is going to affect our agriculture. And women, entrepreneurs, there's simplified customs procedures for them. 10 years from now, they're able to kind of like, send their customs declarations online to the customs official. When they get there, it's all like, yep, zip, zip, zip.
I'm here for this. I'm here for this AfTA vision.
Yes, my dear, we have to be here for it. So this is the vision, and this is what will happen. I am telling you, I'm prophesying that this is what will happen because there is consensus about the need for it to happen. Africa has decided it's not going to be the forgotten continent or the begging bowl of the world. We have decided we're going to come together. Yes, it do so.
Within the context of what's going on right now with regards to the vaccine, right? That richer countries have decided that because it is their vaccines that have been manufactured by their industries, by their pharmaceutical industries, that they're not going to allow us to get these patents, right? When, no African country, not even a group of African countries have been able to produce or manufacture a vaccine. We want to see a world where there is a global crisis and Africa can have an Africa response that answers the problems of Africans for Africans. And if we consistently stay in the place where we are now, where we're waiting for people to give us, donor vaccines, 100,000 here, knowing full well it's not going to meet what we need, it's really a joke. So I'm definitely here for the vision. We're going to take a short break, but if you have any questions, now's the time to ask it. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with questions from all of you. Thank you so much. So good.
You're watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe. You're watching African Experts with Vickie Remoe.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Beatrice Cheto, who is a senior trade expert and advisor at the AU, and we're talking about AfCFTA for businesses. Now we're going to go to some questions from our audience. What is our first question for today? Okay, the first question comes from Judge Walker, who's watching on YouTube. Do African countries buy into regional trade? Trading with each other is ECOWAS, MRU. Is it working to its full potential? I think we already know the answer to that, but go ahead.
It's not working to its full potential. And there is always, the thing about it is, everybody asks the question. People say, African countries, they've been in GATS. Nothing has changed. Nothing has helped them. They've been in ECOWAS. They've been in EAC. But I believe that this time, because it is written by Africans, it's been developed by Africans, this particular trade agreement, there is more of an incentive to do something. And if they don't do anything, having written this beautiful agreement, then what would be the point of writing it? The fact is they want to trade with each other, and this is the route to do so. So they will do it. They believe in it.
Okay. Can we take the next question, please? The next question is, I personally do not believe the whole concept with the African Union or trade agreement. My question is, what positive impacts will this trade agreement cause if Africa does not have a central bank to regulate the economic standard in all member states and one currency? This is a really fantastic question because we know that the ECOWAS has promised us the ECHO since before I maybe could even read. We still don't have an ECHO, but I think this is a very legitimate question. How do we work? How do we do trade when we don't have one currency and we don't have one central bank?
So I think there are a couple of issues here in this question. The first thing to note is that this AfCFTA is just a trade agreement. It's not a customs union. So it won't do monetary policy. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's different from EAC and ECOWAS, where those are customs unions, and that's one step further on in terms of integration from a trade agreement. This is just a broad trade agreement which has all these countries coming together. But just like you have all these different tools to assist, so you have stuff on infrastructure happening through PIDA, the Program on Infrastructure Development in Africa. You also have institutions like AfrEximbank helping AU and the AfCFTA Secretariat with something called PAPS, the Pan-African Payment System. So, Vickie, you're sitting in, you're a dress designer, you're sitting in Sierra Leone, you have a customer in Lagos. You can basically say to your customer, this dress that I'm making for you costs how many leons? That customer sitting in Lagos can pay in Naira and you will get the money in leones. And
Is
basically, it
like
seeks
like an app? Is this through some kind of
it's
app?
not an app.
Okay.
It hasn't been fully defined yet, but essentially,
Okay.
it will cut the cost and the hassle of having to convert to dollars and then reconvert back into your currency.
Right.
So that
that
will actually be a tool that will help strengthen and deepen integration, because you won't have to worry about going to go and get currency, a foreign currency, exchange it, pay there, and then all that will be cut out. Your local currency will be sufficient to pay, and you will get it in the equivalent and with the equivalent value. That's the important thing.
Okay. Can we take the next question, please? Alimatu wants to know which countries currently have an after national strategy that is kind of gender driven.
I don't actually know the answer to that, but I do know that many of the countries that have developed AfCFTA strategies have some kind of gender dimension, but I wouldn't say they're gender driven. It would be great if they did have this gender lens. And we know actually that down the line, there will be a protocol on women in trade under AfTA, so that's a good thing. But also the AfTA itself has, as one of its aspirations, is gender equality and the promotion of gender equality. And that is linked to the transformation of African economies. So, yeah.
I mean, personally, I'm like, there's no economy in the world that has developed without providing equal access, equal opportunities, and support to women. Like, half of your population is not going to develop your economy. No country is going to come out of poverty with half of its population out of decision-making, not participating in trade. So any country that does not want to develop, continue to keep your women back. You will not go anywhere. Because women can earn. Yes, we can earn and we can spend. So if you do not allow women in to participate in the economy, it's basically your loss. The other this is more of a comment. It said, would AfTA work if there's no political will?
Of course not. And that's what I was trying to tell you, Vickie, that the countries that have negotiated this agreement actually believe in it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even shown up. Right. Everyone was saying, Africans, Africans, they talk, but they can never agree. They were like, it's never going to happen. This agreement will never get concluded. It'll never get signed. At every step of the way, we have confounded the naysayers. We signed on March 2018. 44 countries signed. By April 2019. We had 22 signatories, 22 ratifications, and the agreement came into force almost a year to the not a year to the day, but like a year plus 1 month plus 1 day, and it entered into force. So even now, people are saying, yeah, you got it ratified, it entered into force, but it'll never be implemented. I just say, watch and see. There's a sense, there's something in the air where Africans have decided, as I told you, they're not going to be, the beggar anymore. They're going to say, this is who we are. This is where we are. We have resources. We can make use of those resources. You look at a country like Congo. Congo's not going to be a basket case forever. It's signed on. It will soon ratify. Once it does, think of all those, ports, bridges, roads that will be developed. Data centers. There's so much to play for here, and there is so much momentum driving this. And there's a sense that even now the business community, as you can see, is kind of coming on board and saying, hey, what's this thing? What can we get out of it? Here we are.
Thank you so much. And with that, we've come to the end of today's African Experts. I would like to thank the production team at vrcmarketing.com in Sierra Leone and here in Ghana. They are Salwa Kamara, Frankvin Bob McEwen, Mohamed Gando Jallo, Abdulhamid Kanu, Alassane Cardbo, and Augustine Cardbo. And of course, thank you to our guest, Beatrice Cheto, and all of you across the continent and in the diaspora for tuning in. For more information about this show and other shows, please visit us at africanexperts.net. Because AfCFTA is a vision that really is over 50 years old, today I would like to leave you with a quote from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, words from him that he said at the AU, at the founding of the AU on 24th May 1963. We need unified economic planning for Africa. Until the economic power of Africa is in our hands, the masses can have no real concern and no real interest for safeguarding our security, for ensuring the stability of our regimes, and for bending their strength to the fulfillment of our ends. With our united resources, energies, and talents, we have the means. As soon as we show the will to transform the economic structures of our individual states, from poverty to that of wealth, from inequality to the satisfaction of popular needs, only on a continental basis shall we be able to plan the proper utilization of all our resources for the full development of our continents. Until next week, una tenki and tata from all of us here at African Experts. See you next week.